Hello everybody, we are back with another video. Unfortunately, this is pre-recorded, so I still will be in my room as I couldn't do the video in the living room because my wife's at work and my dog is not having me being gone. So with that being said, please make sure to bear with me and then subscribe if you're new to my channel, new to hockey, whatever the case may be, as we talk about plenty of NHL content, some other leagues maybe and stuff like that, but in general it's pretty NHL based. And so with that, we're going to be talking about NHL teams, of course, and just looking at how the teams, the past 20 champions, have done this season prior before they won the cup, and what that could mean for teams that face an early exit this year. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it something kind of in the middle? Let's talk about that. And I'm going to try not to get confused because I've tried to record this multiple times and I keep stumbling upon what I was doing because I keep thinking the year they won the cup, and then I think for the year before I get a little mixed up because it's not as memorable as a season typically. But anyway, we're going to try to do this. If anything is wrong factually, I apologize, but I'm doing this because I love hockey and I'm trying to do content, and that is the basis of it. So bear with me again. So kicking off, you have the 2002 Detroit Red Wings. They, of course, had a really good squad. 2002, they won the cup. Had Hosek there, the dominator, and he was able to be part of that team. But the previous season, they actually ended up losing in the quarterfinal to the Kings in 6 games. So right off the bat, teams that face an early exit feel really good about this, knowing that a team like the Red Wings were able to lose in the first round before the following year being able to win it all. 2003 Devils were a team that won their 3rd championship in a span from then back to 1995. But the preseason prior, in 2002, they actually lost in the quarterfinal to the Carolina Hurricanes in 6 games. So back-to-back years, kicking this off really well, where you have champions, but the previous year, I should say, they were not on a deep run at all. In 2004, the Lightning won their first ever championship, but the season before that, they actually lost in the semifinal, the second round of the New Jersey Devils in 5 games. So the first time you see a team that ended up winning the cup, but the year before, they didn't lose in the first round. So I guess is where you get to see a little bit more of a normal expectation here. As for the 2006 Carolina Hurricanes, they won the cup. The year prior, they didn't play at all because there was a lockout, but the year before that, which I'm going to count, they actually didn't make the playoffs. In 2004, the team looked a little different, and then the 2006 squad, but we're going to count it because to go from missing the playoffs one year to winning the Stanley Cup, the 2 seasons after that, especially after all the lockout drama, we're going to count it. So that is 3 teams that ended up either missing the playoffs or making it and losing in the first round that ended up winning the Stanley Cup. 2007 Anaheim Ducks also won their first championship, and the year before that, they lost in the Western Conference Final to the Edmonton Oilers in 5 games. That Anaheim team had some really good seasons and could have won multiple Stanley Cups in that era. Of course, only won 1, but you get to see another deep run by them at this time. 2008 Red Wings were able to win their first Stanley Cup since the 2002 Red Wings. But guess what? The year prior, they actually ended up losing in the Western Conference Final to the Anaheim Ducks. So Anaheim, Detroit, Edmonton, all these teams kind of featured right around there. And for the Red Wings, you can see they were able to go on a deep run. Shocker, I know, because they made a lot of runs back in the day. As for the 2009 Red Wings, they won the Stanley Cup for the first time in almost 2 decades, with the first championship for Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang. The season prior to this, they ended up losing the Stanley Cup final to the Detroit Red Wings in 6 games. Had a lot of motivation. They were able to get back there, although I do think that in 2009 it was kind of rocky at the beginning of that season. 2010 Hawks won a championship for the ages against the Philadelphia Flyers, snapping a very long, in fact the longest NHL drought at the time. The year before that, they lost to the Detroit Red Wings in the Western Conference Final. In 5 games, Detroit featured in this, especially in the late 2000s. 2011 Boston Bruins snapped a really long drought as well for the Bees. And then the season prior, you look at that, they lost to the Flyers in the semifinal, second round again. And if you remember that series pretty well, they actually ended up having a 3-0 series lead, and then they lost it. Boston fans want to bury this, but it did happen back in 2010. 2012 Kings won their first championship in NHL history, and the year before that, they ended up actually losing in the quarterfinal to the San Jose Sharks in 6 games. Bodes really well for teams that get knocked out early. Again, you see another club here, like the 2002 Red Wings, 2003 New Jersey Devils, 2006 Carolina Hurricanes, that were able to go on and win the Cup, and that actually happened again in 2013. As you saw, the Hawks win the championship, but the year before that, they actually lost in the quarterfinal to the Arizona Coyotes. May have been known as the Phoenix Coyotes, run around there. I can't remember what year they changed it over to Arizona, but I do think it might have been Arizona at that time. I should have checked, but I completely forgot about the fact that they were called Phoenix. As for 2014, the Kings won their second championship. In the year before that, they actually lost to the Hawks in 5 games in the conference final. The scores were closer than the series indicates there, with it being 5 games, but Game 5 ended in overtime, and there were some other close scores in that series. As for the 2015 Hawks, they, of course, won the 3rd championship and ended up becoming a modern-day dynasty. The year before that, they lost in a very painful and heartbreaking series for them in the Western Conference Final. In Game 7 in overtime, Alec Martinez, of course, scored that OT goal, and that would have been a 3rd straight championship appearance had they been able to make it in 14 to go on at 15. Would they have won back in 2014 over the Rangers? That's up for you to decide, but another chance where you get to see a really good team that won the Cup, kind of where they ended up. Chicago was making pretty deep runs at this time, so yeah. As for the 2016 Penguins, they won their first one since 2009. What did they do in the year prior? They lost to the Rangers in the first round in 5 games. That was the year I think Matt Murray kind of stepped up in net. They lost to the Rangers, of course, early on in this one. Might have actually been the year after that Murray stepped up, but I do remember people freaking out at the time in 2015, saying the Penguins are going nowhere because they had a lot of early exits at the time. Who would have known? The season afterwards, they went on to win the Stanley Cup. Kind of makes you wonder for some teams that are thinking about tearing it down. Maybe, just maybe. That's all I'm saying. As for the 2017 Penguins, they just won in 2016, so there's not a lot to say much about that. They ended up going back-to-back, so we'll skip past them. 2018 Washington Capitals were able to win their first championship in franchise history, but the season prior lost to the Pittsburgh Penguins in 7 games in the second round. Pittsburgh had their number for a really long time. Washington able to get over that second round slump that they seemed to be stuck in. And then the following year, the 2019 season, the St. Louis Blues won their first championship in franchise history. Before the season prior, they ended up missing the playoffs. Colorado actually beat the Blues, I think, in the very last game of the year. Whoever won that game was going to go to the playoffs. Colorado won. The Blues did not make it with 94 points. It was a tough year. The Central Division was really, really good that year, if I remember right. But, of course, in 2019, just a year later, they won the first championship. And we got to see, again, another team that either missed the playoffs or make it. And you're kind of seeing a lot of teams that had maybe never won a championship before, that had kind of bad results, whether that be in the playoffs or missing the postseason, be able to go on and win a Stanley Cup. 2020, we saw the Lightning, of course, win their second Stanley Cup in franchise history. The season prior, guess what? They lost to Columbus in 6 games. So, again, another team that had an early exit. Didn't matter. 2021, Tampa Bay won again. Not a lot to say, just kind of like Pittsburgh. And then in 2022, Colorado Avalanche were able to go on and win the Stanley Cup, where the season prior they lost in the second round against the Vegas Golden Knights in 6 games. That was viewed as probably the winner would go on to play in the Stanley Cup final. Montreal kind of did their thing there, and that was it. But in summary, we have seen multiple teams go on to win the Stanley Cup. In fact, more than you'd expect after either missing the playoffs or losing in the first round. It's actually kind of common. Now, there are some things I do want to say. While there are some teams that missed the playoffs, the Canes kind of get weird, and the Blues kind of get weird too. They had some foundation pieces. Of course, you can't ignore that. And then they were able to get it done while dealing with a lot of adversity. And we're able to get it done under a lot of stressful conditions. So a lot of teams need to be able to do that if they're going to have to go on, and especially if they miss the playoffs to win the Stanley Cup. But there are other factors to this, namely the playoff format being changed, roster addition, subtraction, stuff like that, and just dealing with injuries, the ebbs and flows of seasons. So there's not something that I can say definitively you can take away from this, but at the end of the day, for you guys that might be dealing with a fan base, or as a fan base that are dealing with teams that might not be going on deep runs and stuff like that, you can look at this and see that over the past 20 seasons there is hope, there is something to look forward to. And if your team is consistently losing in the first round or not making the playoffs at all, as long as they have some talented prospects, or they have a talented roster and they get aggressive during the trade deadline, or they stand pat and rally as a group, there is the potential to win a Stanley Cup after really falling short of what you're hoping for as a fan. So there is some optimism, there is some hope, there is something that you can say after your team, loses in the first round this year. Say, you just wait until next year, we could go on and do it. But anyway, what are your takeaways from all this? All these teams going on to win Stanley Cup when having poor results, or teams that were able to go on and win the Stanley Cup after making deep runs, kind of like Chicago did there for a while, and Detroit. Let me know your thoughts down below. Again, I apologize, this video is kind of at the point where I think my phone's dying. It's hot in here. The dog is not very happy with the fan being turned off. So yeah, I apologize for this video. Again, the quality is typically better, but I did want to get out a video here today, and this is something that I put a lot of work in for the notes, and I was excited to talk about it with the time being around the time when teams are going to get eliminated. So make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe. Have a great night. And you all be all right. Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.